What's up, everybody? Hockey Time here, back again with another video. Today is my first edition of the NHL Power Rankings for the 2023-2024 NHL season. Just a rundown on how I'm going to kind of run these. Typically, I'm going to plan to do Thursday to Thursday. So for this week, the last games put into consideration for this list are October 19th. The two games on the 20th are not being applied to this list. So generally going to try to keep it, not super swing based. I'm not going to try to have a ton of movement week to week, but we'll see kind of how it progresses. Obviously, early in the season, there's going to be some bigger adjustments, but as we go along, teams will probably settle into their places a bit more consistently. So, with that being said, let's get started. At 32nd, no real surprises here. It's the San Jose Sharks. They start the season 0-3-1. Obviously winless. They've pretty much been dominated every game they've played. The only reason that the games have been somewhat close has been Mackenzie Blackwood. Both of the two games he's played, he's faced 40-plus shots, which is tough for him. Obviously kind of showed up there at the end of the Carolina game. We'll see if the Sharks can kind of improve upon that moving forward, because Mackenzie Blackwood facing 40-plus shots a game is probably not a recipe for success. 31st, they're down 6 spots from their initial preseason ranking. It's the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Blue Jackets are kind of a weird team. They have moments where they look okay, and then they have moments where, when they're not on their game, they're really not on their game, which isn't really all that different from last year, aside from the massive injury problems. So goaltending still an issue for these guys. Neither Spencer Martin nor Elvis Merzlikins have really looked all that great. Obviously, Elvis has been sick the last couple of games the Blue Jackets have played, including tonight. As I'm recording this, Spencer Martin is in net for the Blue Jackets against the Flames. So we'll see if Elvis can kind of get back healthy and rebound, but until then, it's going to be probably rough going for the Blue Jackets. At 30th, dropping 7 spots from their initial ranking, it's the second oldest team in the NHL, the Washington Capitals, and they have looked like it in their first couple games of the season. They're 1-2. They probably deserve to be 0-3. I really don't think they should have won that game against Calgary. They looked terrible against Pittsburgh and equally terrible against the Ottawa Senators. Just really slow. Obi hasn't been able to really generate anything. Kemper had that one fantastic game where he kind of stole them a win against the Flames, but really no aspect of the Caps has looked good to start the season, so a bit of concern from them. I would expect them to improve, but we'll see what happens next week for them. In 29th, also dropping 7 spots from their preseason ranking, it's the Seattle Kraken. Kind of predicted this one to start the year. I didn't really expect Seattle's scoring to keep up the pace they finished last year with. Again, they were the number one team at scoring 5-on-5 last season, but they kind of lacked that top-end skill that a lot of these other, higher-tier teams have. And it's kind of shown to start the season. They've struggled to score pretty mightily. Through their 5 games, they have 10 goals, and 7 of them came in one game, that being last night's game against the Carolina Hurricanes. So we'll see if they can improve upon that. If they can't, it's going to be a long season for the Kraken. We'll see if Philip Grubauer can bounce back too. He hasn't been terrible, but hasn't been kind of what they need him to be if they're going to see another playoff season. So we'll see what happens with the Kraken moving forward. At 28th, moving up 1 spot, is the Anaheim Ducks. Despite being ranked pretty low, the Ducks have actually impressed me a good bit. Obviously, their roster lacks the talent and depth that a lot of other rosters in the league do. But nonetheless, they've hung in there with some pretty good teams, obviously losing by 1 goal to the Dallas Stars, upsetting the Carolina Hurricanes. Those are both pretty good feats for an early on, good start to the season for the Ducks. We'll see if they can kind of continue this again. I don't expect them to really climb this list. I don't expect them to be near the playoffs. But all things considered, it's a relatively good start to the year for the Ducks, despite starting the season 1-2. So we'll see if they can keep that moving in the coming week or two. At 27, also moving up 1 spot, it's the Montreal Canadiens. Obviously, the big thing for the Habs recently has been the news of Kirby Dach being out for the rest of the season, which is a huge blow for them considering how well he was playing to start the year. Similar to the Ducks, they've been pretty competitive in all their games. Obviously, they forced overtime with the Leafs in their season opener. They beat the Blackhawks when they visited town. Obviously, the Blackhawks aren't really, an expected playoff team, but nonetheless, they've been competitive in a lot of their games. But like the Ducks, their depth is probably going to show as a pretty big flaw for them throughout the year. Their goaltending is likely to struggle too, but to this point, not really anything to be disappointed about for the Canadiens, so they move up 1 spot as of the preseason. Number 26, another team moving up 1 spot from their preseason ranking, is the Nashville Predators. The Preds, have had some good competitive games aside from the one hammering they got from the Edmonton Oilers after the Oilers started 0-2 against the Canucks. The teams they've beaten haven't been all that impressive, but nonetheless, Saros has been doing his job. They've been getting some decent kind of roundabout depth scoring from their guys. I think they probably need a little bit more of it if they're going to make a push for the playoff throughout this season, but We'll see if the Preds can climb again. I don't really have super high expectations for them, but if UC Saros can play well, if their group of defensemen can continue to do what they've done for the past seemingly 10 plus years, and if they can get some depth scoring, there's really not a limit to where this team can go. But at the end of the day, the offense is definitely going to be the key piece for them. So we'll see how that looks moving forward. Number 25, moving up 7 spots from their preseason ranking, it's the Chicago Blackhawks. Obviously, the excitement around Bedard has been the main thing for them. And like the Canadiens and the Ducks, they've looked competitive and pretty strong in the games they've played. They beat 2 really solid teams in the Penguins and the Leafs to start the season, but again, losing to both the Canadiens and then the Bruins in those back-to-back games is tough. Again, I don't expect this team to be a playoff team. I don't expect them to push for a playoff spot. I don't really expect them to be close whatsoever. And frankly, their lack of depth really showed the most against the Avalanche last night. They got outshot 41-18. They were never really in the game. Frankly, if it weren't for Peter Mrazek, that game could have been much worse than 4-0. So it's a good start for the Blackhawks, despite having a sub 500 record. We'll see if they can continue that moving forward. But I wouldn't expect them to really take too much further of a jump from this point. Number 6, up 6 spots so far, is the Philadelphia Flyers. They've probably been the most impressive of the quote bottom feeder teams so far this season. They beat some decent teams. I mean, Vancouver had a good start and then lost to Philly. Obviously, McDavid and the Oilers came in and lost as well. So they're doing a good job of making their games competitive. Obviously, Torts is a coach that's not really going to accept anything other than that. So I never really expect the Flyers to get blown out by anybody, but I did not have them starting the first week and a half of the season in first in the Metro on my bingo card. So we'll see if they can keep this up. I wouldn't expect it, but just like last season, the Flyers are off to a pretty good start. So we'll see if they can maintain that. At number 23, moving up 1 spot, is the St. Louis Blues. Jordan Binnington's been great for them so far. Obviously, Joel Hofer played Thursday night, and he didn't look great against Arizona. To this point in the season, St. Louis has just kind of struggled to score, but they've done an okay job keeping the puck out of their net. We'll see if that theme can continue. Obviously, Binnington was not that great for them last year, and they struggled to score a lot more than some other teams. Neither Kyrou or Thomas have been, producing a ton for them so far. So that's one thing that's definitely going to have to change if the Blues want to climb this ladder and get closer to the playoffs. But for now, I have them kind of in this mid-tier team. We'll see which direction they go. Again, they only move up 1 spot from their preseason ranking. At number 22, moving up 4 spots, it's the team that beat St. Louis last night in the Arizona Coyotes. The Coyotes look good so far. I mean, they, again, kind of middle of the road. They're not scoring a ton, but their goaltending is doing well enough to keep them, above water here. Ingram definitely exceeding expectations to this point in the season. Logan Cooley's actually outscoring Bedard. Granted, he has a much better cast around him, so we'll see if that can keep up. But really, it's the big guys on this team. It's Schmaltz, it's Keller. Sean Dursey's been pretty good to this point. Again, Logan Cooley's been doing fairly well for his first few games in the regular season in the National Hockey League. So we'll see if they can continue that. But so far, it's been a pretty good start to the season for the Coyotes. No real complaints from me on there, and we'll see if they can maintain that, much like some teams like the Flyers and the Blackhawks. At number 21, dropping 2 spots, is the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets have not looked good to finish this last set of games. Frankly, if that trend continues, I will probably have them drop a bit more next week. Their scoring is okay. They have not been able to keep the puck out of their own net, which is typically a strength of theirs. So that's obviously a bit concerning. The reason they're still above a lot of these teams, despite their worst record, is they started higher on the power rankings. I had a bit higher expectations for them than some teams like Arizona, St. Louis, obviously Philly, and Chicago. So we'll see where Winnipeg goes from here. I do expect Hellebuck and their group of defensemen to rebound. I think they're an okay offensive team. So I do expect this script to get flipped a bit, but we'll see what happens starting next week for the Jets. Staying at number 20, the same spot they were at in the preseason, is the Vancouver Canucks. Obviously, they had a pretty great start to the season, starting 2-0 against Edmonton, including that absolute beatdown in their season opener. And then they lose back-to-back games to the Flyers and the Tampa Bay Lightning. The common theme through these games really has been Connor Hellebuck being pretty good. Obviously, Casey DeSmith played the second game against Edmonton, and he frankly looked pretty good too. Aside from that one game that they opened the season with, their offense hasn't been that great, despite having a 2-2 record. It's really been the goaltending that's kept them in it. Their defense hasn't even really looked all that great. There's been a lot of really ugly turnovers that both Demko and DeSmith have bailed them out of quite a few times. So that's going to have to change if the Canucks want to find success. But I do think that if they can pick up their offense, this is a team that potentially could make a push for the playoffs. But obviously, we're very early on to make that claim. So we'll see if the Canucks can kind of keep things going in the net, and if they can, provide some more offense to help DeSmith and Demko. Number 19, dropping 3 spots, is the Calgary Flames. I look at the Flames kind of similarly as I do the Capitals. A bit slower. Markstrom is, kind of has higher expectations and has been struggling a bit. Frankly, they should have won against the Capitals. This team should be 3-1, not 2-1 right now. But nonetheless, this is more of an eye test thing for me as far as why I have them as far down the list as I do. Obviously, they're above 500 with their record, NHL 500, that is. So we'll see if the Flames can rebound. I'm not too worried about them, but gonna want a few more saves from Markstrom and frankly some more production from some of their top end guys if they want to climb the standings and make a push for the playoffs as we progress throughout the season. Again, I'm well aware that we're very early on to be making claims about playoffs, but we'll see what Calgary's capable of as we move forward. Number 18, moving down 1 spot, is the New York Islanders. Again, this is a team that's 2-0, but I still have them dropping 1 spot. They're just kind of hard to judge. They beat the Sabres and the Coyotes. Obviously, neither of those teams are super high powered. I mean, the Sabres, frankly, should be. But in their game against the Coyotes, they only gave up 14 shots. So that's obviously a good thing for them. But there's just some other teams that have kind of leapfrogged them. I don't expect that to be the case forever, obviously. They're playing the Devils right now, and last I checked, it was tied 3-3. So obviously, they win that game. They're going to climb up the board here. I do update this nightly. So, you guys won't see that as of tonight, but we'll see if the Islanders can continue moving forward here. Sorokin's been off to a great start. A little bit more of a shaky game from him tonight against the Devils of what I've seen so far. But again, that's not going to be included in tonight's ranking. So for now, I have them 18th, dropping 1 spot from the preseason ranking. At 17, dropping 7 spots from their preseason ranking. So this is one of the first big drops in the mid-tier of the list. It's the Buffalo Sabres. Frankly, they need more from their 2 big guys, Tuch and Thompson. The goaltending's been kind of iffy. But typically, at least as of last season, they would have had the scoring to kind of outweigh that. To this point, they haven't. They're 1-3. Levi's looked pretty uncomfortable compared to where he finished the season last year, and they just haven't been scoring enough. So the Sabres can start scoring enough. I would expect Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen to get a look probably this weekend or Tuesday when all 16 teams play. And we'll see what kind of develops from there. But I think if Thompson and Tuch can pick things up, if Devin Levi and or UPL can figure things out between the pipes for them, this team's going to be fine. But for now, I just can't keep them where I had them to start the year, obviously, with the way they've been performing. At number 16, dropping 4 spots, is the LA Kings. This one I kind of struggle with. Again, another team that has an above NHL 500 record, but another eye test team for me that the goaltending just really hasn't been there yet. Neither Phoenix Copley or Cam Talbot have looked all that good. They're scoring in droves. I mean, this team knows how to fill the back of the net. They have a lot of depth, a lot of offensive talent, but I just need to see a little bit more from their goaltending and from their defense before I can comfortably keep them higher on this list. So for that reason, I have the Kings at 16. I do expect them to move up. I have a lot of faith in this team to be a playoff team. Frankly, they could make a move to win the Pacific if they can get a goalie. So we'll see what the Kings can do. For now, have them kind of right in the middle of the pack. I don't expect this team to stay there whatsoever. At number 15, the biggest drop of any team on this list this week, it's the Edmonton Oilers, another team with big goaltending problems to start the year. Obviously, getting beat by the Canucks twice in a row to start your season is not really a great way to do it. They go out to Nashville and put a beating on them, as expected, frankly. And then they come out to Philly and lose that game too. So really not a great start for the Oilers. We'll see if one of Campbell or Stuart Skinner can start consistently being the guy for them. This team doesn't need great goaltending. They just need NHL average goaltending, and they will outscore a lot of their problems. But they need one of those guys to step up and be the guy that's going to provide that. So until that happens, I can't keep the Oilers as high as I had them to start the year. I had them at 6th in the preseason ranking. And frankly, this is not a top tier team with the current status of their goaltending. So we'll see if they can improve that. Until then, I cannot have the Oilers in that top row of teams. At number 14, dropping 3 spots, is the Florida Panthers. This is another team that their record's fine. They're 2-2 to start the year. Really, all this team needs to do is kind of maintain a 500 record until Ekblad and Montour come back. They're also short Sam Reinhart right now, so that's another pretty big piece for them. Again, a 2-2 record, nothing wrong with that. Just some teams leapfrogging them, which we'll cover in the next few minutes. But frankly, I wouldn't be too concerned if I was a Panthers fan. Number 13, another big drop, going down 8 spots from their preseason ranking, is the Tampa Bay Lightning. They have a huge goaltending problem, frankly. The scoring is fine for them. It's better than the Oilers, but they've given up, I believe, the second or third most goals against of any team in the NHL so far. Jonas Johansson is just not cutting it to this point. I mean, to score as much as Kucherov, Stamkos, and Hedman have over the course of 5 games and still have a 2-2-1 record, it's it's pretty baffling, to be honest. I mean, just take for example the Tyler Myers goal against the Canucks the other night. It's a clean, it's a hard, well placed shot, but that's a goal that Vasi has probably 95 out of 100 times, right? And that's just, again, they won that game, but against a better team, not the Canucks, that might be the difference between 2 points and no points for them. And that is going to bite the Lightning down the road if it continues. So definitely concerned for the Lightning. I'm not a fan of the Lightning, but it is kind of disappointing to see them struggling this much despite how much they've been able to score to start the year. At number 12, moving up one spot, it's the Minnesota Wild. Another kind of middle of the road team. Neither Gustafsson or Fleury have been great so far. Obviously, Gustafsson had that really good game one, and then he wasn't great in his second game. Fleury similarly was fine in Montreal, and then very not fine against the LA Kings. So we'll see if one of those guys can come out and steal the starting job. I expect Gustafsson to be that guy. As far as their scoring goes, I think they're going to be fine. Obviously, they have some minor injuries here and there, which is kind of dampening their offensive firepower for the time being, but not all too worried about the Minnesota Wild to start the year. At number 11, moving up 7 spots, is the Ottawa Senators. This team has definitely exceeded my expectations to start the year. I expected them to be good. I did not expect them to be this strong to start. Both Forsberg and Korpisalo have been great. Their big guys are scoring. The defense has been fine. All of Shabbat, Sanderson, and Chychrun have gotten looks on the power play. I think Sanderson's probably going to take over as the guy for their power play one, which is, in my opinion, a good thing. I expect this team to make the playoffs, frankly, if they continue to play this way again. Early to make a statement like that, I know, but the Sens just look fantastic to start the year. At number 10, pretty similar story. It's the Detroit Red Wings. This team's up 11 spots from their preseason ranking. Their goaltending's held up to this point. Alex DeBrincat has the most points in the NHL. Dylan Larkins looked great. Their depth has been good. The biggest concern for them outside their crease was the defense, and the defense has also been good to this point. So to start the year, the Red Wings are looking great. If they can keep this up, I expect them, frankly, to make a good push for the playoffs too. But again, very early. We'll see if they can kind of maintain this pace as the year chugs along. At number 9, they've not moved from the preseason ranking. It's the New York Rangers. Not really too much to say about this team. They've been kind of on and off in each of their 4 games so far. Shesterkin's had a couple good games and a couple not so good games. The offense has not quite been to the level I'd expect it to be, but again, I'm not really worried about the Rangers. They have a ton of depth. I think they're going to be fine, so I'm not going to look to move them until, if they have a bad week next week, we'll see what happens. But for now, I'm comfortable keeping them where they were to start the season. Number 8, moving up 6 spots, is the Pittsburgh Penguins. Frankly, this group of old men has been pretty good so far. They should have beat Chicago in their opening night. They kind of let that game slip, and it's obviously affecting their record. But they are, in my opinion, the best, or maybe second best 2-2 team in the NHL so far. Crosby's been great. Malkin's been on an absolute heater. Gensel's been good. Tristan Jarry to this point has been pretty good. So if this team can maintain this, they are going to be scary come the spring. And again, if this is kind of the last hurrah with this group of guys, again, as they get older, this is just going to be harder and harder for them. If they can maintain this pace, they're going to be a scary team all year long. So we'll see if the Penguins can keep this up. Number 7, dropping 5 spots, is the New Jersey Devils. They start the year 1-1-1. They looked a little bit disinterested in some of the games they've played to this point. Their goaltending has been neither great nor bad. Same for their defense. I think they're going to be fine. Again, they're playing right now as I'm recording this, so we'll see if they can manage to win that. They're going to probably bump a couple spots back up this list. But for the time being, I'm fine dropping them a couple spots. There's been some teams that's outperformed them, and frankly, that's going to happen. So I think the Devils are going to be fine, but I do have them dropping a few spots to start the season. Coming at you live here from the editing process, I realized I stepped away from my desk and completely forgot to mention my thoughts on the Maple Leafs to this point. Their scoring has been great, but they need to figure it out on defense and in goal. Obviously, Ilya Samsonov and Joseph Woll have been kind of struggling to this point, and frankly, their group of defensemen look pretty terrible. We'll see if they can figure that out as the weeks go along here, but I expect them to be just fine if their goaltending can get fixed. If not, they may be in for a more interesting season than we thought. Number 5, jumping up 10 spots, is the Boston Bruins. Allmark and Swayman have been great so far. They have not scored as much as they did last year, which I don't think anyone expected. But the defense has been fine. Really, the combination of those three has led the Bruins to start their season undefeated. They've not had the best strength of schedule yet. They played a couple of the West Coast teams, which are not expected to be playoff teams. So we'll see if they can continue this as they start playing better teams. But if that's the case, they're going to find themselves pretty high up this list over the coming weeks. But again, we'll see if their restructured forward group can continue to get the job done as long as Allmark and Swayman are holding the fort down on the back end for them. At number 4, dropping 3 spots from the preseason, is the Carolina Hurricanes. Frankly, this team would probably still be 1 or 2 if they didn't have that game against Seattle last night, but they frankly look terrible. Obviously, their injury to Anderson doesn't help. It's not uncommon for him at this point in his career, unfortunately, but the Canes lead the league in goals for and goals against, which is pretty baffling. Obviously, a very strong offensive team. If they can get a couple saves too, they're going to be just fine. So despite their record not looking great, I'm really not worried about the Canes, and they've frankly looked good in all the games they've played. So that's why I have them only dropping a handful of spots to start the year. At number 3, I have the Dallas Stars. Ottinger's been great to this point. Their games have all been pretty low scoring, but Miro Heiskanen kind of broke through his early couple of games slump there. If Jason Robertson and Rope Hintz can do the same, I'm really not worried about this team, especially if Jake Ottinger continues what he's done to this point. He's probably been the second or third best goalie to start the year. Again, only a small handful of games completed here, but I really like what I've seen from the Stars team so far, and we'll see if they can keep that up as the weeks progress. Number 2 and number 1, I think, are no-brainers here, so I'm just going to pop them both on at the same time. Number 2, obviously the Avs, 4-0 to start the year. Vegas is 5-0 to start the year. The Avs and Golden Knights both have had some pretty well-rounded scoring. Their defenses have both looked great. For the Avs, Alex Georgiev, he's played all 4 games. I think he's got like a 950 some save percentage and a sub 1 or just above 1 goals against average, something ridiculous. And then both Aiden Hill, Logan Thompson, their stats are pretty good, but it's more of an eye test thing for them. They've both been fine. Again, this team, they're so well-rounded that you don't need fantastic goaltending, but if they're getting fantastic goaltending, they're the scariest team in the league. There's been no cup hangover for them. All their big guys are producing. Same can be said for the Avalanche. So this team, or these 2 teams, are going to be 1 and 2 for a long time unless something pretty significant changes here, I think. Frankly, I think even despite as good as Dallas has been, they're a cut above Dallas. So that's going to be it for this one. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. I know these power rankings can be a bit polarizing, but that's kind of what makes them fun. So let me know if you think I have your team ranked too highly or too low, and we'll see how much this shifts again starting next week. So thanks as always for watching, and we will catch you guys soon.